Welcome to Life Stories, where we bring you stories of change, resilience, and unexpected twists that shape our lives. Today's story is one of self-discovery, empowerment, and the complex paths we take to find our true selves. It's about a woman who quietly built an empire while supporting her husband's dreams, only to see everything she had created tested when he walked away. Join us as we unfold the tale of a marriage that ended in surprise, the lessons learned along the way, and the new beginnings that came from unexpected opportunities. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to start today's story. It started like any other evening, with the kind of quiet that fills a home when all the sound seems to come from the outside. The trees outside our windows were heavy with autumn leaves, shedding them one by one as if they were also preparing for change. Inside, the air felt thick with the weight of silence. A silence that had been building for months, if not years. And in that stillness, Jake's departure felt like it had been written long before he even spoke the words. I watched him, carefully folding his clothes, placing them neatly into the suitcases. His designer luggage gleamed under the soft light from the overhead lamp, a stark reminder of the life he had cultivated. And the irony of it wasn't lost on me. I had bought him those bags last Christmas, an extravagant gesture that now seemed almost too perfect. His hands moved methodically, folding shirts with the same practiced precision he'd used when he was building his career. The same precision he used when he walked into every room as if he owned it. He wasn't a man who dealt in spontaneity. And this, his departure, was no different. It felt rehearsed, like he had planned it in detail for months. I think we both knew this was coming, Jake said, his voice calm, detached, almost as though he were explaining a simple business transaction. But it wasn't a business deal. It wasn't a simple transaction. It was the end of 8 years of marriage, of shared dreams, shared struggles, shared life. And in those 8 years, somewhere along the way, we had become two people who were only connected by obligation. We want different things, he added, as if that was all that needed to be said. I repeated the words to myself, different things. The irony of it all hit me. What had we really wanted? At first, I had believed that we wanted the same things. But as the years wore on, I had realized that what he wanted was never aligned with what I needed. He wanted the thrill of big dreams, the chase of success that promised so much but delivered little. And I had wanted stability, security, the kind of foundation you build not just for yourself, but for the life you build with someone else. Stability was what I had spent years constructing for him, for us. But in the end, it wasn't enough. Adventure, passion, a chance to really live, Jake said, gesturing around the room. He wasn't even looking at me anymore. His focus was on the designer furniture, the space we had created together. He couldn't see the life we had built. Not really. He saw only the life he'd wanted to escape from. A life that, to him, was defined by routine, by responsibility, by the very things he had never cared to understand about me. The debts I had cleared for him, the foundation I had built while he kept chasing one entrepreneurial venture after another. I didn't say anything in response, because there was nothing to say. There had been no room for my voice in our marriage for a long time. And now, in this moment, when it mattered the most, I couldn't find it. Jake had already made up his mind. I knew that, but there was still a part of me that wanted him to understand. To see me, to see what I had done, what I had been doing all these years. The truth was, I had always been practical. I had always kept my head down, building the quiet, steady success that no one seemed to notice. 6 weeks ago, I had made the final payment on his student loans that had financed his MBA. His supposed ticket to success. I had taken over those payments when his third startup failed, when the debts started piling up, when his dreams seemed more and more like sinking ships. He didn't even know. He still thought we were making the minimum payments on that debt. I almost laughed. He never asked. He never cared to check the statements. Financial details bored him unless they were numbers he could drop at dinner parties. Numbers that made him look successful, powerful, admired. But those numbers were just illusions. They weren't real. They didn't build anything. They didn't create a future. And now, with his bags packed and his future waiting for him, Jake had no idea what he was walking away from. He didn't know that in the quiet moments I had been building something of my own. Something far more solid than his fleeting ventures. Artemis Financial, a consulting firm that had already attracted high net worth clients, including some of the wealthiest individuals in the country. You've always been good with money, he said, sipping the final suitcase shut. Practical. The word stung, because it wasn't a compliment. He said it as if it were a flaw. As if my ability to plan, to save, to build from nothing, was something to be dismissed. But it was that very practicality that had saved us from financial ruin time and time again. It was that practical nature that had enabled me to build a 7-figure business while quietly supporting him, while keeping the facade of his entrepreneurial dreams alive. I remained silent. There was nothing more to say. What could I say? He was leaving, and for the first time in years, I was no longer afraid of being left behind. As Jake zipped up the final suitcase, the sound of the fabric sealing shut felt like a quiet conclusion. A period at the end of a long chapter. But for me, it wasn't just the end, it was the beginning of something I had been quietly preparing for. Without even realizing it, the weight of all those years, all those silent sacrifices, was finally lifting. I watched him for a moment longer. His back turned to me as he fiddled with the zippers, completely oblivious to the storm that had been brewing inside me. Are you sure you're okay with this? Jake asked, not looking at me. His voice held a tinge of uncertainty now, a crack that I hadn't heard before. I nodded slowly, keeping my emotions in check. You should go. You've made your decision. And I had made mine, too. The truth was, I had spent years caring for our marriage. For him. For the life we had built together. I had supported him through failed businesses, plummeting credit scores, and constant instability, but somewhere along the way, I had forgotten to care for myself, to nurture my own dreams. While he was busy chasing the next big venture, I was quietly building something of my own. I had no choice. Jake thought I was just a practical, financially minded woman, but he couldn't have been more wrong. I had always been practical. Yes, but I was also strategic. And it wasn't just the debts I had cleared for him, or the bills I had paid in silence. It was the quiet way I had been building my own success while he was too absorbed in his own ventures to notice. Every step I took was calculated, every decision made with precision, but none of that had ever mattered to him, until now. When I had finally cleared his student loans, a debt that had hung over our heads like a shadow for years. Jake had never even noticed. I had paid them off in secret, redirecting funds from my own savings account, making sure he still believed we were struggling. And now, as I sat in our empty bedroom, watching him pack his designer luggage, I realized that his departure wasn't just a personal loss for me. It was a financial victory I had been working toward for years. He had no idea that the financial freedom he was now walking into, the very thing that might allow his new business venture to succeed, was a gift from me. You've always been good with money, he had said earlier, as if my ability to delay gratification and plan for the future was some sort of flaw. It wasn't. It had been the very thing that allowed me to build Artemis Financial, the boutique firm I had founded in the background, all while maintaining the illusion of being just the practical wife. I had never shared my business with Jake. I had never explained the late nights spent working on my company, the phone calls with potential clients, or the contracts I had signed behind closed doors. I had never told him about the countless clients I had helped, clients who didn't care about his failures, but instead trusted me with their most complex financial problems. You should focus on your new beginning, I had said to him as I stood in the doorway, watching him prepare to leave. The words tasted bitter in my mouth, but I knew they were true. I had already begun my new beginning, and I wasn't waiting for anyone to catch up. Jake turned to face me then, his expression softer now, the bravado slipping away. I'm sorry, he said, his voice low. I didn't see it before. What you were doing, what you built. It was the first time in 8 years that I had heard him admit that. And as much as it should have been a moment of triumph for me, it was also bittersweet. He wasn't just apologizing for his lack of appreciation for my work. He was acknowledging that he had missed the most important part of me. He had never really seen me. Not the way I needed him to. But that wasn't my burden to carry anymore. I hope you figure it out, I said, my voice steady as I watched him walk out of the room. And as I stood there, I felt a strange mix of emotions wash over me: relief, sadness, anger, but also something else, something I hadn't expected to feel: freedom. 2 months had passed since Jake left. 2 months of silence. Of space that had once been filled with the noise of our lives now filled with my own thoughts and plans. The house felt different without him. Quieter, but not in a bad way. I had started to reclaim the corners of my life that I had sacrificed over the years. The house was still in my name. The equity all mine. My business, Artemis Financial, was expanding beyond anything I could have dreamed. The Forbes feature was a mere 2 weeks away. And I had the world at my fingertips. And then Jake called. I saw the name flash across my phone screen. And for a brief moment, I hesitated. I hadn't spoken to him since he walked out. The emotions I had buried when he left had come flooding back. But this time, they didn't feel like betrayal or hurt. They felt like something different, something more controlled. I had grown in these past 2 months. And now, for the first time, I felt like the one with the upper hand. I answered. I didn't expect to hear from you, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral, though a part of me was bracing for whatever this was. Jake's voice was different. It was still the same calm tone. But now it carried an undertone of something else, maybe respect. Or perhaps the realization of what he had walked away from. I need to talk to you, he said. It's about business. I leaned back in my chair, surprised. Business? After everything? I had assumed he would be long gone, chasing the next big thing, with no interest in anything I was doing. But then again, I was learning more about Jake than I ever had in our marriage. I had always seen him as the charming, sometimes brilliant entrepreneur who couldn't stick with one idea long enough to see it through. Yet here he was, reaching out to me, his ex-wife, for something more than just a quick fix. All right, I said, my voice steady, my curiosity piqued. Let's talk. A week later, Jake walked into my office at Artemis Financial. The room had changed since the last time he had been in my life, much like the space he had walked out of. The space was sleek, polished, and full of light, everything he had once dismissed as too practical or too restrained. I watched him step inside, and for a brief moment, I almost didn't recognize him. He was wearing a dark suit that fit perfectly, a stark contrast to the t-shirts and jeans he used to wear when he came home late, exhausted from the latest startup failure. There was no trace of the man I had married. This man was different. He looked composed, grounded, more present. A faint trace of humility lingered in his eyes, something I had never seen before. He had changed, and perhaps that was what had brought him here. I wasn't sure what to expect when I asked to meet. He began, sitting down across from me. But I wanted to offer you something. Something? I asked, raising an eyebrow, not quite sure what he was getting at. I've been thinking, he continued, about how things ended, about what happened with the business. And about you, about Artemis. I want to propose something. A partnership. I couldn't hide the surprise in my expression. Jake had been the one to leave, the one to push away everything I had built. And now, he was sitting across from me, asking to join forces? There was more to this than a sudden desire for reconciliation. This was a professional proposal. His words hung in the air, almost too heavy to process. Go on, I said, my voice steady, but my mind racing. We've developed a new platform, Evotech Financial, he explained. It's focused on helping young professionals with student debt. It's growing fast, and we're bringing in investors. But we need more. We need someone who understands the kind of financial strategy you've built at Artemis. Your approach to debt optimization is exactly what we're looking for. I could hear the sincerity in his voice. And for the first time in a long time, I began to see the person sitting in front of me not as the man who had left, but as a professional peer. There was no more bravado. No more pretending. He was speaking to me not as an ex-husband, but as a businessman who had realized what I had already known. That true success isn't just about ambition. It's about careful strategy and the ability to adapt. His words resonated with me, more than I cared to admit. And in that moment, I understood. What he was asking for wasn't a second chance at our marriage. It was an opportunity to partner professionally. To leverage each other's strengths in a way that neither of us had fully realized before. "I'll need to see the details," I said, my voice calm, my professional demeanor taking over. "But this could be interesting." Jake nodded, looking almost relieved that I wasn't immediately dismissing him. He had come here seeking a partnership, not closure, not reconciliation, but an opportunity to work together. And despite everything that had happened, despite the way he had walked away from our life, I found myself considering his proposal, not out of some lingering feeling for him, but because, in that moment, I saw a way to create something even bigger than either of us had ever imagined. As Jake left my office that day, I sat there for a long time, letting the quiet settle around me. The unexpected offer had left me with more questions than answers. But as I glanced at the city skyline outside my window, I realized that for the first time in years, I wasn't just reacting to life, I was shaping it. The decisions I had made, the quiet sacrifices, and the resilience I had shown all led me to this point, where the future was no longer uncertain. It was in my hands. Jake's departure had been the catalyst for change, but it was my strength, my ability to adapt, that had allowed me to stand tall. He had walked away, but in doing so, he had unknowingly set me free. I had built something substantial, something I could be proud of. And now, with his unexpected business proposal, I saw the possibility of a partnership that could elevate both of us. But only if we could keep our personal histories behind us. I had learned valuable lessons over the years, about love, about trust, and about recognizing my own worth. Jake might have left without truly seeing me, but now, he had to face the reality of who I had become. We might never have the relationship we once dreamed of, but this new collaboration could be something entirely different. It could be the beginning of a new chapter, where both of us would finally stand on equal ground. The journey wasn't over, it had just begun. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more life stories and insights that touch the heart. Stay tuned for new videos. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.